hold that, and you then hand that to me.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Anybody have any announcements? Anything to share? Nothing? All right, well, good, because this morning we have a guest speaker that I'm excited about, and I don't want to waste any more time before we get to that, but I do have a couple things to tell you announcement-wise. There is an assignment for today. It is posted. Your discussion question has been posted. We will have class on Thursday at our normal time and our normal location. The rest of your interview prep is due next Monday, but I'm gonna give you all of next week for that. So I'll back that up to Friday, just in case anybody was having trouble making appointments or anything like that. I don't think a few extra days is gonna hurt. Anybody have any questions on that? All right, so this morning, we are lucky enough to have David Harrelson come speak, and I've asked James Harrelson to introduce him to you. So let's give it up for James.
Hey y'all, I'll be up here real quick. I get the honor to introduce my dad, David Harrelson. I'm lucky enough to be his son, first off. But a little bit about him is that he went to the University of Citadel for 4 years, where he got a business degree, and then he also dabbled in a little bit of club rugby there, and won a few things there. And then after that, he's proceeded to go to the University of Georgia, where he got his master's. And then after that, he's been in the business world for 30 years with vice presidents, owners, and for the last 9 years, he's now the CEO of a business or company where he'll go more in depth of, called Fortress Packaging. And it is my honor to introduce my dad, David Harrelson.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good
I
morning.
haven't done this in a while, so forgive me. I'm going to read what I wrote because it's first time I've actually put down on paper what I've done for the last 10 years. But what I'm going to try to do is explain what I've done, how I've gotten there, and maybe share some words of wisdom with you that maybe you can take with you, depending on what your goals are in life and that sort of thing. I'd like to thank Professor Tebow and the Turner College for having me here today. Columbus State University, go Cougars. This morning I'd like to tell you a little bit about my journey in business and share with you some lessons I've learned and wisdom I've gained from my experiences. This is my journey. It's my story. It's not necessarily the only path to running a successful business and doing well in life. And what I want to do is share some of the lessons I learned and some of the wisdom that I gained from my experiences with you. My parents weren't millionaires. They didn't have an extensive network. When I grew up, just in a normal life and had to try to figure it all out as I went along. I started like many of you, and my parents were great, but they didn't know anything about business, and they didn't have vast networks, and I didn't know about running small businesses, and didn't until I went to grad school and met some people in my late 30s who did know all those things and actually taught me all about it. Currently, I'm the founder and owner of a packaging company called Fortress Packaging. This is the second business that I have owned and run. The first one I purchased in a very distressed condition, turned it around and sold it for a profit. Fortress is a business, though, that I started from scratch, just from an idea. And where it is today, this year we'll finish the year at about $26 million in top line sales. And that's not too bad considering it just started as an idea. And I'll tell you how that came about as we go along here. The business makes what they call interior protective packaging. It's these partitions over here. We make them out of chipboard, we make them out of cardboard, but basically bottles jars of food products like pickles or gravy or whatever go in between those pieces of paper, and that all goes in a box and ships to the grocery store. That's what I do. That's all I do. So keep that in mind as we go along here. A lot of complexities in a business, but keeping it simple definitely helps. First, so I have some credibility as I talk about things with you this morning. I do have a Bachelor of Science in Business from the Citadel, which is a military college down in Charleston, South Carolina. I have an MBA also from the University of Georgia. I'm not a class geek. I got my MBA 15 years after I went to college, and I would recommend you don't you go out and get experience before you just stay in school for more. But I do have both of those, and they were very far apart. I went to work out of college for a paper and packaging company called Sonoco Products. Back then, it was a Fortune 500 company, and that was back in 1989 when I first joined them. I worked for them for 16 years. During that time, I worked at their headquarters doing cost accounting. I have a water. And special projects. And then I got picked to go out to a manufacturing plant that was very broken. They were getting a whole new team together to go out and fix it. And for years, I did that from plant to plant to plant, going and taking hard jobs. And this is one of the first things I wanted to share with you. These were jobs that were very, very hard. Nobody wanted. There was a reason these plants were broken. And nobody wanted to go there because it was so hard to get them fixed and running well. But I'm going to tell you that it was a great opportunity to learn new things. I didn't turn them down. I did every one that they asked me to do. Each one was like a move up and more money, but it was good experience for later. And I look back on that now, and I'm really glad that I did it. I mean, some of those jobs were third shift supervisor jobs in a plant. Some of them were doing quality work and ordering raw materials. One plant I worked in had 7-minute lead times. Back in those days, you would get a fax from the customer, and our plant was built up against their plant, and they called it a through-the-wall operation. We made cans, like Pringles cans, biscuit cans. This was a biscuit company, so we made the cans, and they put biscuit dough in them. The fax would roll. You'd get 15, 20, 30 items that they were about to run. You'd have 7 minutes to get them through the wall and start running. So it was a real pressure cooker. I did this can making with Sonoco from really from 1989 to about 1994. In 1995, I transferred over to a division of this big company that made these things over here called partitions. I've worked in Atlanta, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Philadelphia. I've held jobs in customer service. Every manufacturing job you can have in a plant, I've had those. And worked in plants that were in LA, Maine, Chicago, Philadelphia. I had 3 in Mexico at one time: Monterrey, Juarez, and Mexico City. Before leaving Sonoco's big company world for good, I also was a national sales manager supervising 14 sales reps. And this is going to come in handy in a minute, and I'll tell you why, at this big company. But in 2005, when I'd gone to get my master's degree, I met a lot of different people, not big company people, entrepreneurs and business owners at that program at Georgia. And that's where it really started. I left that world, went to work in a finance company that was actually a project that we put together at the University of Georgia. That worked really well. We had about $110 million in assets under our control. And then the Great Recession hit. And during the Great Recession, nothing worked. That business crumbled, and I got to do consulting work for different companies, which was code for I'll do anything to keep groceries on the table, but no one was hiring, and I just did project work for a number of years. One of the first things I did coming out of the recession, ran across a business at the time. It was probably 2013-ish, 2012, and the business was right here in Columbus, which is why we're here in Columbus. James is here and knows all about Columbus State. We purchased a small business that had a government contract at Fort Benning, Fort Moore, and I want to tell you that was my first entry into small business. I liquidated a pension, a large bonus received from a consulting gig, and got a bank loan from a good friend who was a friend of mine from Rotary, who owned a bank, a community bank, and that's how we started. I was all in with my entire life savings in a business, and it was terrifying. So what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? I'm going to tell you that I started down this path because I was sick of turning around businesses and working for other people. I felt I was ready and able, but I had no idea how hard it would turn out to be. And one of the things I want to make sure you know today is that starting and running your own business is actually pretty hard, and you have to be prepared or you'll fail. And we'll talk about that in just a second. When I started Fortress, I started with an idea, and to start a business, you have to ask yourself, is that something that I know that nobody else knows? And you think you can exploit that? Is it a new value creator, or is it a new creation completely? I couldn't say Fortress was something brand new like Steve Jobs developing and bringing the iPod to market. He didn't actually invent that, but he did bring it to market and develop it. And that was an all new product. Fortress is no iPod. And that's another thing I want to share with you this morning. I did think I did know more about the partition business from my consulting gigs and working at that big company for 16 years and making partitions all over the United States and doing their sales all over the United States. But I wasn't sure it was enough, but I thought it might be enough to create a business. One thing I want to share with you, though, is doing things well is more important than doing new things. And that's a big thing. Ordinary ideas executed exceptionally well will get you there. Don't wait for the perfect big idea to come along. Just get in the game and do what you do very well. Good example of that would be Truett Cathy. Chick-fil-A, whether you like them or not, they're very successful. You know, he started just right up the road at College Park making chicken sandwiches. Nothing new, nothing spectacular, but he did it very well. He created a company. His team built it over the years, and he died a billionaire. You know, so he didn't start with anything new. He just did it really, really well, and that mattered. Has anyone heard of the book The Art of War by Sun Tzu? Anybody heard of that? Yeah. You ever watch the movie Battleship? They talk about it sometimes in that movie. The Art of War is a good one. In the book, Sun Tzu says, if you know your enemy like you know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. I'd read that when I was thinking about starting Fortress, and I thought, I know this company that I'm going to compete with. I know it because I worked there, had a bunch of jobs there. I know this business. I know them, and I know me, and I think it's time. I really thought I knew my enemy, and I went off and I started writing a business plan to create Fortress and began to outline strategies I would use to compete with my old company. Once that business plan was built, I needed to find investors and a way to actually get started. In Ohio, there was a family-owned and run packaging business that made partitions that I knew about, and I called on them, and they agreed to meet with me. There's something you need to know about raising capital. Before you can ask anyone for money to back up your startup, there's typically a period of dreaming, hoping, wishing, praying, desiring, and planning that you have to go through. And I'm pretty sure I did all of that for many months as I wrote my plan and then went and pitched my deal. My presentation was well received, thank goodness, and after a couple weeks, I got a green light to start Fortress. It was 2016 at this point, and I didn't close my first big deal with Fortress for the first 12 months. And this is a part where I should keep going, but I'm going to hang on that statement. I got investors, started a company, and didn't do a real big deal for about 12 months. The first 12 months were horrible. All too often, as you read Harvard Business Reviews or you read cases in your textbooks, they present the case very nice and neat. Every detail is kind of covered, but they smooth it over to make their point. And I want to tell you that real life business is nothing like that. It was pretty stressful to go through a 12-month period with other people's money and not be producing much of anything. Fortress is a big success now, but back then I can't even begin to tell you how tough that was. During that time, I called on companies across the country and mostly got a lot of very nice no thank yous. This was not totally expected, and I felt like a failure, but you learn from failure, actually more than you learn from success. And it's a funny thing about failure. Failure builds character. If you fall on your face, and all of you will, make sure you learn from experience so you can do better next time. Every failure has a lesson, and as much as I wanted to quit every time I heard the word no, I did keep going. Tony Robbins, of all people, Tony Robbins said, "The path to success is to take massive, determined action." Personally, I think Babe Ruth said it better when he said, "It's hard to beat somebody who just won't stop working." And I didn't stop working. There's just no simple way to say this other than there's no substitute for hard work. Eventually, I did connect with a business, and of all places, it was in California. This was a packaging solutions company that had a very large winery as a customer, and they agreed to buy partitions from me. In fact, they allowed me to put a machine in the back of one of their buildings in a little town called Fairfield, California, which is about 45 minutes east of San Francisco and about 11 miles south of Napa. So right near, or in these days, in the middle of wine country. The partitions we made in Fairfield were going into the sixth largest winery in California, a company called Treasury Wine Estates. Young people don't drink a lot of wine, but I'll ask if you know Stag's Leap Winery. Very nice wine. BV, Julio Vineyards. BV is on the label. One of the most popular wines you'll see in a lot of places is 19 Crimes. Snoop Dogg's on the label now of the 19 Crimes bottle. You see that? It's actually not a bad little bottle of wine. But this company is called Treasury Wine Estates. They have all these wineries in their portfolio. They're tough as nails. Started running for them in January of 2017. They are actually still a customer of mine. This year we'll do about 8 million cases, and they are about probably my 8th largest account right now. I also now have 32 more accounts that are active in the Bay Area, and a lot of opportunities for growth now that we're really rolling. Most of my customers at Fortress are wineries, and I spend about half the month in California every month. My wife will tell you that's not cool, but that's what it takes, and I'm still doing it. Because I have slowly but successfully built my brand, a lot of new accounts now come to me. I don't get in the car and just drive aimlessly anymore and call on people. That was also terrifying, to just show up and tell people, yeah, I'd like for you to purchase partitions from me. And a couple people found out that I was really small and just starting up, and initially had interest, but then thought I was too small. So you got a lot of excuses back in those days for not wanting to work with us, but you just had to keep faking it till you made it, right? In August of 2023, I merged with the company that invested in me, and we created a holding company, which we then merged in a joint venture with a giant paper company called Greif.